Tonight, anger mounting in Texas as police admit to making a critical mistake responding to that deadly school shooting. The stunning admission from law enforcement saying they made, quote, the wrong decision. Officers waiting for almost an hour as the gunman barricaded himself inside a fourth grade classroom. Students trapped with the shooter repeatedly calling 911, begging for police to come help. 19 officers right outside in the hallway waiting and not confronting the shooter for 47 minutes. How police are explaining the agonizing delay and how an already devastated, grieving community is reacting tonight. Massive protests erupting outside of the NRA's annual convention in Houston, just hours away from the site of that school massacre. Former President Trump delivering the keynote address late today. What he said as the nationwide debate over guns intensifies. Plus, holiday travel nightmare, severe weather disrupting travel plans for millions of Americans this Memorial Day weekend. What you need to know if you're hitting the roads or taking to the skies. Verdict watch, jury deliberations underway in the Johnny Depp-Amber Heard defamation case. The arguments both sides made in their closing statements. Derailment disaster, the massive oil spill after a train crashed into a creek. The warning tonight for boaters in the area. And heroes home. The soldier who put his life on the line in Afghanistan finally finding a place to call home. The heartwarming moment you will not want to miss. Top Story begins right now. Good evening. I'm Kate Snow in for Tom Llamas tonight. It was the wrong decision, period. Those the stunning words from Texas law enforcement today admitting to making a tragic mistake. For almost an hour, armed officers waited in the hallway of Robb Elementary as terrified fourth graders remained trapped with a gunman. A fateful decision authorities now admit was the wrong one. New images show some of those children escaping through the windows of their classroom, the fear clear in their eyes as officers lead them away. 19 students and 2 teachers were killed when it was all over. Mourners paying tribute at a memorial site today. The somber scene in Uvalde, a striking contrast to the heated confrontations outside the NRA's annual convention in Houston. Protesters on both sides of the gun debate clashing in a park across the street. We'll have more from that convention in just a moment, including remarks just delivered by former President Trump. But we begin first with Morgan Chesky. He leads us off from Uvalde.
Good morning. Thank you for being here.
Today, a stunning admission.
It was a wrong decision, period. There's no excuse for that.
Texas Department of Public Safety Director Stephen McCraw declaring police on the scene were too slow to act and should have stormed the classroom sooner.
There should have been an entry at that as soon as you can.
Officials say as many as 19 officers were in a hallway by 12:03 p.m. But the door to the fourth grade classroom with the shooter inside was not breached until 12:50, 47 minutes later. The decision to wait made by the chief of police for the school district, who officials say believed it was a barricaded subject situation, not an active shooter.
He was convinced at the time that there was no more threat to the children and that the subject was barricaded and that they had time to organize with the proper equipment to go in. In retrospect, from where I'm sitting right now, clearly there was kids in the room. Clearly, they may have been shot but injured, and it's important for life-saving purposes to immediately get there and render aid.
While officers were in the hallway, terrified children and teachers were calling 911.
She identified herself and whispered she's in room 112. At 12:10, she called back. In room 12, advised there were multiple dead.
Young kids begging for police to help.
At approximately 12:43 and 12:47, she asked 911 to please send the police now.
The door was ultimately opened not by a response team using force, but with a janitor's key. We also learned the gunman fired more than 100 times within the first 4 minutes alone and arrived with more than 1,600 rounds of ammunition. The door he used to enter the school with was supposed to be locked, but had been propped open by a teacher just minutes before the shooter got there. Many of the details different than those first reported by officials.
As everybody has learned, the information that I was given turned out in part to be inaccurate, and I'm absolutely livid about that.
A Democratic congressman is now calling for the FBI to investigate the response here. Who is going to be held accountable?
Well, first of all, we welcome the FBI. They play a vital role. And again, this is about finding facts and reporting facts as quick as we can.
And today, New photos show children climbing out of windows, fear in their eyes, desperate to escape the horrific scenes inside. It's how Jaden Perez and many of his friends got out. He's a 4th grader at Robb Elementary.
What went through your head as you saw that happen, Jaden?
Am I gonna die?
Do you think you'll ever feel safe going back there?
No.
Morgan Chesky joins me now live from Uvalde. Morgan, we're also learning more about the Federal Border Patrol agents who were there. It sounds like they made the final call to finally move in.
Kate, they did, and we're told this is according to 2 senior law enforcement officials who say that tactical Border Patrol units arrived here at Robb Elementary at 12:15 Tuesday afternoon. They were instructed by local police to not engage the gunman and stay back, but after about 30 minutes, sources say that these federal agents chose to overrule that guidance and move in and take out that gunman. Kate?
Morgan, I want to take a minute here because you were one of the first reporters on the ground there. I know how hard it is to report. I can only imagine how hard it is there. As the week draws to a close, as someone who grew up an hour away from Uvalde, how are you processing this?
That's very... Kate, it's not bad unless you take the time to stop and think about what happened here Tuesday. When you realize that today was supposed to be the first day of summer vacation for all these kids. And you have folks in the community singing songs across the street from 21 Crosses now. And you got a shipment of small caskets being shipped this way. You know, Uvalde is about an hour away from my hometown. But it might as well have been just down the street, being here the last week. And all you can really do is pray for these folks. And the saddest part of all, Kate, is that you see those crosses and you know that somewhere, at some point, there's going to be more probably going up somewhere in our country. Kate?
Yeah, Morgan, you're a human being and a reporter. Thank you so much. I hope you get some time this weekend. We're going to move on and talk about authorities admitting those serious, critical mistakes. Tonight, those actions are coming under intense scrutiny from federal investigators, as Morgan mentioned, who are looking into what went wrong exactly. Miguel Almaguer has more on that.
As police waited to take down the gunman in Uvalde, experts say that decision cost lives. The roughly hour and 20 minutes from the first to final shots should have never elapsed. What was happening inside the classroom, former officers say, was not a barricaded suspect, but an active shooter.
That's an active scene. We have to go in. Even if that shooting stops, it is 100% wrong that it ever transitioned into a barricaded suspect. The shooter will divert their attention to us. So we will engage the shooter. During that time, he is not killing students. He's not killing staff.
The Texas Commission on Law Enforcement says time is the #1 enemy during active shooter response, and the #1 objective of police should be to stop the killing. Instead, 19 officers waited in a hallway for 47 minutes as children in the classroom called 911 and begged police for help.
I really don't have words at this point for it. Even if I was standing there and an incident commander told me, you know, you've got kids inside a room, you have an armed shooter who's already fired numerous shots, we're going to wait. Well, good luck. I'm not waiting. I'm going in by myself.
The Uvalde School District had recently doubled its security budget and held an active shooter drill in March.
As long as there's kids and as long as there's someone's firing, you go to the gun.
But this time they didn't.
Is there any scenario in which waiting for over an hour is acceptable?
In this situation, no, not at all. You have to go in, no matter what, no matter the officers were saying, well, they were afraid of being shot. Are you scared? Yes, but you do what you're trained to do. And if you take your oath seriously, then you hazard yourself.
Tonight, tragic mistakes with unspeakable and unbearable consequences.
Miguel Almaguer joins me now. Miguel, it does seem like the story keeps changing every day. It was really frustrating to listen to that press conference today. What happens now in terms of the investigation into what happened?
Well, Kate, an outside law enforcement agency, likely the FBI, will have to backtrack and look at exactly what went wrong. The officers who were involved in this could face some discipline at work. They could also even face potential civil lawsuits down the line. Kate?
Miguel, thanks. For more on how the police responded to the massacre at Robb Elementary, I want to bring in NBC News correspondent Ken Delanian. He covers national security and intelligence. Ken, some of the details that Texas DPS released today, shocking doesn't begin to describe how people felt, and they paint a very different picture than what we were told in the hours after this shooting. We even heard the governor complaining about that today. We also know that Uvalde PD hosted active shooter training just over 2 months ago. What do we know about how exactly they were trained to respond?
It's very simple, Kate. Since the 1999 Columbine school shooting, police have been taught to rush in the case of an active shooter, even if it's a single officer with a gun. And not just police across the country, but Texas police specifically have a policy manual that says the idea is to move in with whatever force you have, whether it's 2, 3, 4, or 5 officers. In the case of an active shooter situation, to distract the shooter, to get the shooter's attention on you, the officer, rather than the potential victims. The complication here is that a call was made on the scene that the situation migrated from an active shooter situation into what they call a barricaded subject, somebody barricaded inside a room with hostages. That was a colossal misjudgment. It's now very clear, and that's what the Texas Department of Public Safety said today. That judgment was made by the on-scene commander, who happens to be the police chief of the school district police force, which is a force of 6 police officers. And the only reason that a decision was made to later go in and kill the shooter, we're now learning, is that some federal agents, some Border Patrol agents, decided to override that directive after mounting frustration and after parents were begging the police to go in. And they took it on their own initiative to form a stack and to breach that door and to kill the shooter. But this is not how it's supposed to happen, Kate.
Yeah, our reporting now from some of our colleagues is that the federal agents were told by the local guys, stay put, don't act right now, don't go in there.
That's right. It's remarkable. These were highly trained, some of them tactical Border Patrol agents with military training, kind of almost like special operations of the federal law enforcement community. They arrived at about 12:15, and they were essentially put off by these school district police officers who were in command of the scene. And we're told, they were increasingly frustrated. And then it wasn't until about 40 minutes later that they finally decided we have to do something. And in fairness, there were some local police that also joined them in breaching that room and putting 15 bullets into that shooter. But the real question is, did any children die during that delay? And Texas officials today were asked that, and they said they could not answer it, Kate.
Yeah, and we know that there were children dialing 911 from inside the room while this was all happening. You would think that all those law enforcement officers that are in the hallway would know that there were children inside the room still alive. I guess we don't know what that breakdown was.
We don't know exactly, although the head of the Texas Department of Public Safety implied that they did know, because he was asked of that very question, and he said, look, the decision was made that this was a barricaded subject situation. So to me, he implied that the on-scene commander factored that in. And look, if it just was a hostage situation, then that might have been the right call to wait. But he was firing weapons, the shooter was, firing a gun. There were the students who were calling 911 were saying, we're in danger, please help us. There are 8 to 9 students still alive in here. So that, there's just really no explanation for why that commander made the decision he did, Kate.
Well, I know you talk to a lot of people in law enforcement and justice. What are they saying to you tonight, Ken? Are they as frustrated as all of us are?
They're horrified and aghast. That's right, Kate. I mean, nobody can defend this. Until today, some people were trying to give law enforcement the benefit of the doubt and saying there must be a reason that they waited. Were they locked out? Well, they were locked out for a time, but was it an issue of breaching the door? But today, essentially, the Texas officials laid it all out on the table, and they said it themselves that this was the wrong call. And that's what everybody I've talked to about this in law enforcement and in national security circles has said, Bill Bratton, the former commissioner of NYPD, said it was an embarrassment to law enforcement. And our colleague Tom Winter said it was the greatest failure in American law enforcement history when it comes to mass shootings, Kate.
Ken Delanian, thank you. We keep saying that all this reporting about the response from law enforcement sparks new outrage, and that is nowhere more true than in the city of Uvalde. Sam Brock spoke to some of those families.
As the weight of a mass shooting brings a community to its knees, parents in South Texas are demanding more from the agencies tasked with protecting their children.
These are children, fourth graders, children. That little girl should not have to have covered herself in blood to survive that time frame that it took to get in and rescue her.
For these moms from San Antonio, they say accountability above all else is what they're looking for.
I trust that when I send my children to school each day, that they're going to be safe, that their school resource officer is going to be there, the doors are going to be secured, and that the local police are going to take action.
The Texas State Public Safety Director, today, unable to explain why the school resource officer wasn't on campus or why the on-scene commander misjudged an ongoing active shooter threat.
We're not here to defend what happened. We're here to report the facts.
How does that sit with you?
That's cold.
It's cold.
Brutal. Very brutal.
There's no compassion.
For one grandmother whose little princess, 10-year-old Eliana Torres, was taken in an instant, she wants answers to a tragedy that will haunt her for a lifetime.
How did he get in there? Why weren't the school doors locked with chains? Or why weren't even the classroom doors were locked? Why?
Sam joins me now from Uvalde as well. Sam, as we've learned these new details today about the actions of law enforcement, what are you hearing from members of the community about those details?
It did strike me so much, Kate, that in all of these conversations with parents, they told me that they wanted truth, they wanted transparency, and they had this feeling in their gut that they were not getting that truth from law enforcement. And lo and behold, hours later, we find out that CBP agents were held back here, according to senior law enforcement officials, when they wanted to go into that school. Truthfulness is number one. And number two, it takes a certain kind of gumption and selflessness to serve, whether it's the military or whether it's a police force in your local community. But if you take that oath, they say, to serve and protect, they want to see it fulfilled, even if it means potentially endangering your own life to do so. That is the expectation that moms and dads and brothers and sisters here have for their local law enforcement. Kate.
All right, Sam Brock, thank you. The fury that so many people are feeling there also seen today outside the NRA convention in Houston. Hundreds protesting the gun lobby's annual meeting just days after that massacre. Weapons were banned from the event as former President Trump took the stage. NBC News senior congressional correspondent Garrett Hake is in Houston for us tonight.
The national debate over guns moving to downtown Houston as hundreds of demonstrators protested attendees at the NRA's annual meeting.
Please. Promise me you will get in their faces before another child is shot in their face.
With former President Trump the headline speaker, weapons forbidden from the hall.
As always, in the wake of these tragedies, the various gun control policies being pushed by the left would have done nothing to prevent the horror that took place. Absolutely nothing.
Texas' top two Republican elected officials canceling their in-person appearances in the wake of the Uvalde massacre. Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick writing that despite his strong support for the Second Amendment, he did not want to bring additional, quote, pain or grief to the families of those suffering in Uvalde. In a pre-recorded message, Texas Governor Greg Abbott arguing gun control doesn't reduce crime.
There are thousands of laws on the books across the country that limit the owning or using of firearms. Laws that have not stopped madmen from carrying out evil acts on innocent people.
Among the 14 acres of guns, gear, and ammo exhibited here, attendees divided over how elected officials might prevent more tragedies like Uvalde.
No one can own a weapon unless you're 25 years or older.
25?
25. That's my thinking.
When you hear some of the stuff that gun control advocates kick around after a shooting like this, like raising the age, like to make it 21 maybe to buy a long gun, or things like red flag laws, more background checks. Is any of that the kind of thing you would support?
No. I think we really need to look at mental health.
Garrett Hake joins us now from Houston. Garrett, you work on Capitol Hill most of the time. Have lawmakers said anything about whether or not they're going to take any action?
Well, Kate, they've said quite a lot, but there's probably only two people whose voices you need to listen to right now. That's Chris Murphy, the Democrat from Connecticut, and John Cornyn, the senior Republican senator from Texas. They are the two who've been asked by their party leadership to see if there is any kind of compromise, be it on background checks, red flag laws, or something else gun-related that could get to 60 votes in the Senate. They are the two I'm watching, but even lawmakers in both parties say their expectations right now, based on all the history around this issue, are low.
And any timeline on that, Garrett, on how quickly we could see something bipartisan?
Democrats have said they want to work together in a bipartisan way for 10 days. That is the window to try to see if something can be negotiated. After that, Democrats will try to move unilaterally, but they don't have the votes to do that. So that's the frame we're looking at here.
Okay, Garrett Hake, thank you so much. We're going to turn now to the severe weather threat ahead of a busy Memorial Day weekend. More than 35 million Americans are facing flash flood and tornado warnings. And with more than 1,000 flights already canceled, travelers are getting ready for messy holiday travel this weekend. NBC's Jesse Kirsch has more on that.
From coast to coast, with nearly 40 million people expected to skip town for Memorial Day, tonight summer's unofficial kickoff getting a bumpy start. Severe weather threatening up to 35 million people along the eastern seaboard today, with flash flooding, destructive winds, and tornado threats. FlightAware tracking more than 1,000 U.S. flights canceled, with more severe weather threatening the plains and upper Midwest tomorrow through Monday. Road tripping isn't stress-free either, with gas prices soaring.
We even thought about driving, but the cost of fuel is so expensive. I said absolutely not.
Still, Hopper says the average domestic round-trip flight this Memorial Day is nearly $400.
We typically see higher prices heading into the summer months.
But Hopper says strong demand and rising jet fuel costs are also helping push airfares up way beyond pre-COVID prices. And it's not just the airlines. Resort towns are facing worker shortages as the price of a summer getaway keeps climbing. Remarkably, AAA still expects more people to travel this Memorial Day than did last year.
I couldn't just stay home like every single time. So this year I made it.
Jesse Kirsch joins me now from Chicago's O'Hare Airport. Jesse, with COVID and other challenges causing airline staffing shortages, how's that affecting travel ahead of the summer?
Yeah, Kate, looking to summer, Delta Airlines just announced that it is cutting about 100 daily flights from July into early August as it struggles to keep up with that growing demand. Kate?
That is not good news. Jesse, thank you. For more on how long these storms are going to last and a look at the rest of the Memorial Day weekend forecast, I want to bring in NBC News meteorologist Michelle Grossman. Michelle, please tell me it's going to get better.
It will get better. Hi there, Kate. Good to see you. It's going to get better, at least in the Northeast tomorrow afternoon. So we're still watching severe weather at this hour. We've been watching it all day long. And this really is a big system, a slow-moving system that we've been tracking since Monday, and finally impacting the East Coast tonight into tomorrow morning. So this is what it looks like on radar. You can see it's an expansive storm. It's stretching from New England through the Northeast, Mid-Atlantic, down to the Southeast. And we continue to watch a severe weather threat. We've seen these storms spin up tornadoes all throughout the day. I think the first one came at 8 o'clock this morning. We continue to watch the severe weather threat through tonight into tomorrow morning. So a severe thunderstorm watch, that's where you see the yellow box in parts of Virginia. We are watching that until 10 o'clock tonight. But we're watching that threat through tomorrow morning. The Severe Prediction Center, where you see the yellow, that's your slight risk. So that means that's where we're likeliest to see severe weather as we go through tomorrow morning. And we could see winds gusting to 60 miles per hour, some damaging hail. Even a few more tornadoes are possible. The good news with these tornadoes are quick. They spin up quick and then they sort of die out. But we're also watching really heavy rain. This has been a big story all week long, with rain totals up to 6 inches in some spots, so excessive rainfall. That's leading to flash flooding, where you see the green stretching from parts of Pennsylvania down to parts of the Tennessee Valley. Now, this is the setup as we go throughout tomorrow. We have areas of rain and showers lingering in the Northeast because we really need to clear this front. That's going to happen later tomorrow, but a few more strong storms are possible tomorrow morning in New England. That could cause some problems. Jesse had mentioned the roadways, the airways. Well, we are looking at New York City, Buffalo, Boston, New York City. We could see some moderate slowdowns On the roadways as well, we're looking from New York City to Plattsburgh, Buffalo to Boston, Minneapolis to Duluth. We could see some troubles as well. So ending it here, we're going to clear it out. Kate, told you there was good news by Sunday. Sunny and warm in the Northeast, the Mid-Atlantic looking really nice too. And the Southeast, at least parts of the Southeast looking good too. Hope you have a great weekend.
Yeah, I'm traveling tomorrow morning, so wish me luck.
Boy.
Michelle, thank you. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Still ahead tonight, the deadly home explosion. At least 5 people killed, including 4 children. The investigation now underway there. Plus, police in New York arresting dozens of people who they say sold nearly $4 million worth of stolen goods. How officers tracked them down. And the defamation suits involving Johnny Depp and Amber Heard now in the hands of a jury. What was revealed during closing arguments. Stay with us. Back now on Top Story, jury deliberations have begun in the defamation trial involving Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. Their legal teams making their closing arguments today in one last effort to win over the jury. NBC's Steve Patterson in Virginia tonight.
Thank you so much.
The final day in court for the Hollywood duo at the center of a defamation suit.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you now have heard all the evidence in the case.
Tonight, the jury in the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard trial deliberating, trying to get to the bottom of a years-long legal battle. 6 years to the day of Heard filing a temporary restraining order. Depp's team, suing Heard for $50 million, started the day.
Mr. Depp wasn't canceled by Hollywood because he was sometimes late to set. He was canceled because Ms. Heard falsely accused him of domestic violence and sexual violence on the pages of the Washington Post.
Heard's team bringing back a video of one of the couple's spats.
Let's see the monster. Let's see the monster in the flesh.
Are you crazy?
Have you drunk this whole thing this morning?
Oh, you got this going? You got this going? Oh, really?
They argued Depp had his chance to redeem his reputation in the UK, where he lost a libel case he brought against the Sun.
He told his story. He had his opportunities.
Depp brought this defamation suit against Heard after she wrote a 2018 Washington Post op-ed where she described herself as a public figure representing domestic abuse. Though the op-ed never directly mentioned Depp's name, the actor says he never abused Heard and that it derailed his career. To win, Depp's team has to prove that the article was about Mr. Depp, the statement is false, has defamatory implications designed and intended by Ms. Heard, defamed Depp to others, and that Heard made the statement with actual malice. That's why Depp's team has been arguing that Heard, not Depp, was the abuser, arguing Heard used a photo editing app to fake her alleged injuries.
These 2 photographs were taken at the exact same time and have the exact same file name.
Circling back to audio recordings of an argument between the former couple.
I'm sorry I hit you like this, but I did not punch you. I did not deck you. I was hitting you.
What you didn't hear on a single recording you heard in this case, and there were many played by both parties, is Mr. Depp ever admitting to hitting, punching, or kicking Ms. Heard. You didn't hear it. It doesn't exist. It didn't happen.
Heard's team responding.
Think about the message that Mr. Depp and his attorneys are sending to Amber and by extension to every victim of domestic abuse everywhere. If you didn't take pictures, it didn't happen. If you did take pictures, they're fake.
Amber Heard is countersuing for $100 million.
We do ask that you fully and fairly compensate Amber for everything that she's been through.
Stand up for the freedom of speech. Stand up for the First Amendment.
Ultimately, the jury's charge is clear.
The evidence is overwhelming that Ms. Heard's claims of abuse are false.
If Amber was abused by Mr. Depp even one time, then she wins.
And Steve Patterson joins me now from Fairfax, Virginia. Steve, you and I have been talking all day long on News Now. It's quite a crowd. It was quite a crowd of Depp supporters there. Real scene.
Yeah, real scene, Kate. Today I met people from Ohio, from Brooklyn, from London, all in a line that stretched for blocks. Most of them, of course, Depp supporters that even waited for Depp's attorney team to leave. The jury, meanwhile, has rested for the day, through the weekend, through the holiday. They will reconvene on Tuesday in a verdict that could take several days to decide. Kate?
Steve, thank you. As jurors continue deliberation after weeks of testimony starting next week, I want to bring in NBC News legal analyst Danny Savalas. So, Danny, they'll come back at it, right, on Tuesday after the holiday. We have been watching this trial I think the world has been watching this trial for weeks now. Give us a sense of where we landed in terms of the opposing sides. Who did the best job, perhaps, at convincing this jury?
Closing arguments are a summation of the evidence, and Amber Heard's defense team, at least initially, made a pretty strong case. And in a way, it was something that the evidence already worked in their favor. Johnny Depp has the burden of proof as the plaintiff to prove his case, not beyond a reasonable doubt, but by a preponderance of the evidence. And her legal team correctly pointed out that if you believe there was ever any abuse at any time, you don't need to believe everything, but one incident of abuse, and that is a defense verdict for Amber Heard. Now, Amber Heard's counterclaim, on the other hand, I think came across very complicated, and I think the second half of closing by Amber Heard's team demonstrated that it's a difficult, thorny theory of defamation. It's essentially claiming that somebody lied about calling Amber a liar. And so you have two layers like that, makes it complicated for the jury. But if social media is any indicator, it seems like Johnny Depp has won this one by a landslide. I don't think that's a scientific method. I don't think that's anything that's going to affect the jury, but it is an interesting, unscientific study.
Right. Well, that's the thing, though. That's the court of public opinion outside the courtroom. These 7 jurors don't really even know much about what's been happening, or they shouldn't know what's been happening outside, right? So they just have to decide on the defamation part of this. I want to go back to that. You and I have been talking throughout the day today. It's not a trial about abuse, really. I mean, as you said, it sort of hinges on that, but it's a defamation trial. What's the bar for that?
Defamation cases often turn into a mini trial about whatever the alleged lie was. In this case, it's domestic violence, so it becomes a mini trial about whether it's true or not that Amber Heard was abused. But defamation is really what the jury is weighing, and that is a false statement about somebody, and I'll get back to that, that causes somebody damages. And, you know, quietly, that element, that about factor, that article or that column that Amber Heard wrote doesn't mention Johnny Depp. And her defense team correctly pointed out that there's a possibility, if you look at the 4 corners of that document, it isn't really about Johnny Depp within the meaning of defamation. I don't know that everybody would look at that article, maybe now they would, but back then, would they have looked at it and said, oh, she's definitely calling Johnny Depp an abuser in this article. Her defense team also brought up constitutional protections like the First Amendment, very effective, and they also framed her as somebody who was abused and asked the jury, what standard would you have her meet? Would you have abused victims or survivors document everything with videos? What do they need to show to prove that they've been abused? And I thought that was a very effective tool as well.
We're going to see what the jury thinks about all of it. Danny Savalas, thanks for being with us. Appreciate it. Up next tonight, officials in New York announcing charges against 41 people believed to be part of a massive retail theft ring. More and more crimes like that are being caught on cameras across the country. NBC's Stephen Romo looks at what impact a bust like that might have.
Tonight, a massive retail theft ring bust in New York, leading to 41 people arrested. Authorities say it went much further than just petty shoplifting.
Our investigators seized more than $3.8 million worth of stolen goods.
The investigation took nearly 3 years and involved teams from the NYPD and New York Attorney General's office. In a press conference, New York Attorney General Letitia James showed some of the stolen merchandise, including gift cards, designer clothes and accessories, cosmetics, and more. The suspects are accused of selling the high-end items and drugstore merchandise online in an organized ring.
The workers in these stores have been terrorized.
Prosecutors say the alleged ringleader, Ronnie Rubinoff, directed teams to go after specific items to steal. And alleged Rubinoff even signed a lease on a warehouse in New York with plans to open a department store-like facility stocked with stolen goods.
They're selling it a lot less expensive than it would be if it was bought in regular retail stores, and they're making 100% profit.
Rubinoff's attorney, Daniel Gottlieb, tells NBC News his client runs a legitimate business, has pleaded not guilty, and intends to fight the charges. Mayor Eric Adams, who rode into office on an anti-crime campaign, was at the presser as well.
Today is sending a strong message that we are not ignoring it.
But it's not just New York. We've seen similar scenes across the country, from Chicago to Atlanta to California.
We have taken down and are prosecuting a statewide organized retail theft ring. involving defendants who stole more than $1 million.
Data on retail thefts nationwide is sparse, but the National Retail Federation's 2021 survey found these organized thefts cost retailers an average of $700,000 per $1 billion in sales, up significantly over the past few years. A majority of respondents reported an increase in these thefts, too.
I absolutely believe that knowing that there will be a prosecution and arrest, the penalties can be higher for organized crime, will be a deterrent.
And Stephen Romo is with me in the studio now. That was quite the bust. Did they say anything else about the details of how the operation allegedly worked? Yeah, prosecutors did go into a few financial details, saying that they would steal this merchandise and sell it mostly on eBay. And they said they made about $1.3 million over 5 years. But then they claimed they would use about 60% of those profits to pay thieves to bring in even more merchandise to keep that cycle going. And it lasted for a few years, according to those prosecutors. It's a lot more money than any of us, I think, realized. Yeah, a lot on eBay. All places. Yeah, Stephen, thank you so much. When we come back, derailment disaster, train cars carrying crude oil plunging into a Pennsylvania creek. The warning tonight for boaters. Back now with Top Stories news feed, and we begin with a deadly home explosion in Pennsylvania. Authorities say the blast took place in Pottstown, about 40 miles northwest of Philadelphia. At least 5 people, including 4 children, were killed. 2 homes were leveled, several others damaged. The cause of the blast now under investigation. Major cleanup underway in Pittsburgh, the other side of the state, after a train carrying crude oil derailed into a creek. Officials say a heavy construction vehicle was crossing the tracks when it was hit by that train, causing the 17-car derailment. The oil has been contained, but boaters this weekend encouraged to avoid the area due to salvage operations. At least 3 people were injured, but they are expected to be okay. The Justice Department has announced it will not charge 2 former FBI agents who delayed an investigation into allegations against former USA Gymnastics Dr. Larry Nassar. The agency made the announcement after reviewing evidence that those 2 agents did not properly investigate. Nassar is currently serving a sentence of up to 175 years after pleading guilty to sexually abusing his former patients. Now to the nationwide baby formula shortage. New shipments of formula arriving from overseas, but parents are still waiting to see the products on store shelves. And new details tonight on the closure of a formula plant that helped fuel the crisis in the first place. Jolene Kent has the latest.
Nationwide, parents are desperate. The out-of-stock rate for baby formula skyrocketed to 70% last week.
It's just not a good feeling to be on edge at every moment. Is my baby going to eat today?
And now both formula maker Abbott and the FDA are facing new scrutiny from Congress. Abbott manufactures 40% of the formula in the U.S. The company's voluntary recall and closing of its Michigan plant helped trigger the crisis. A sign of trouble came last September in a report to the FDA. An infant who became ill with a rare bacterial infection had consumed formula made at the Abbott plant. In October, an Abbott whistleblower sent FDA officials this 34-page document alleging that lax practices, including regulatory violations, were consistently overlooked and records were knowingly falsified on multiple occasions. In response, Abbott said this former employee was dismissed due to serious violations and since then has made evolving, new, and escalating allegations. But the company says it will thoroughly investigate any allegations. It wasn't until January 31st that the FDA sent a team to the Abbott facility to investigate. There, they found evidence of bacteria in the powdered infant formula environment that can be deadly to infants. It took another 2 weeks before Abbott issued a recall. By now, 3 other babies had been hospitalized. 2 of them had died. Abbott says there's no conclusive evidence to link our formulas to the reported infant illnesses, but the FDA has not ruled out the possibility of a connection.
Jolene Kent joins us now from Los Angeles. Joe, as this crisis continues to worsen, what steps is the federal government taking to help families?
They're trying to bring in more formula, Kate, to help with the shortage. The FDA announcing today that it will soon bring in 1.25 million cans of formula from Australia this time. Kate.
All right, Joe, thank you. Now let's turn to Top Stories Global Watch, and we begin with the latest on the war in Ukraine as Russia ramps up its assault on the Donbas region. New drone footage shared by Ukraine shows Russia shelling. Ukraine's President Zelensky today saying the violence could make the region, quote, uninhabited. And once again, he accused Russia of carrying out a genocide there. In Chile, violent clashes breaking out between police and student protesters. New video showing riot police firing water cannons on a crowd in Santiago. Demonstrators also attacking officers with sticks, a fire extinguisher, even Molotov cocktails. A bus was also set on fire nearby. Students are protesting to demand more resources for education. And now we turn to the latest in the ongoing spread of the monkeypox virus. Hundreds of cases reported around the world, and the virus reaching 8 states here at home in the U.S. Isa Gutierrez has the details on what to look out for and why officials are urging the public to stay calm.
Tonight, monkeypox spreading further into the Americas. The World Health Organization announcing action must be taken now as hundreds of cases are reported in over 20 countries globally.
We are afraid that there will be a spread in community, but currently it's very hard to assess this risk. We think that if we put in place the right measure now, we probably can contain this easily.
Today, the first confirmed case of the virus in South America. Here in the U.S., 10 cases reported across 8 states. The global tally outside of Africa, about 300, more than a third of them in Europe. But officials are urging the public to stay calm.
This is not a disease the general public should be worried of. It's not like COVID or other diseases that spread fast.
Monkeypox has circulated at low levels in Central and West Africa over the past 4 decades. And the WHO stresses the virus hasn't mutated. They say the strain reported in other continents in recent weeks is mild, and patients usually recover in a few weeks. Symptoms include fever, fatigue, fluid-filled bumps, and lymph node swelling. It then progresses to rashes of raised bumps that turn into blisters and eventually dry out and fall off. The virus can spread through infected persons' lesions, contaminated bedsheets or clothing, and respiratory droplets if the infected person has a lesion in their mouth. Dr. Amish Adalja from the Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security tells me that new studies show on average a person infected with monkeypox will transmit the disease to another 1 to 2 people.
If you are somebody that's part of those social networks, if you're a man who has sex with men, if you're a person who goes to events where there might be multiple sexual contacts that occur, you need to be aware that monkeypox could be circulating there.
As far as hospitalization and fatality rates we might see associated with the disease,
we've heard about a handful of hospitalizations here. Most of these cases are not very severe. If you look to 2003 and the 4 dozen cases that occurred in the United States, there were 0 mortality.
This week, the CDC issuing a level 2 travel warning for monkeypox, advising travelers to avoid close contact with sick people, including those with skin or genital lesions, as well as contact with dead or live animals and eating or preparing meat from wild game.
And Isa Gutierrez is joining me now. Isa, the CDC has released vaccine guidance about the monkeypox. What does that look like?
Yeah, that's right, Kate. They're actually recommending smallpox vaccines to protect people who might be at risk of occupational exposure to the monkeypox virus, as well as for people who were already exposed to the virus. They say that these vaccines could help prevent the onset of illness, or at least, if taken within the right amount of time after exposure, to reduce possible symptoms. And by the way, Kate, the government says that there are plenty of these vaccines to go around for those folks right now.
Well, that's some good news. Isa, thank you so much. Coming up, grieving together. Americans traveling to Uvalde, Texas to show their support for that community, trying to navigate through so much tragedy. Stay with us. We're back now with more stories from Uvalde, Texas. Tonight, people from across the country traveling to that Texas town to grieve alongside the heartbroken community. Here's Top Story anchor Tom Llamas.
In Uvalde's town square, you'll find crosses and flowers and tears. Grown men on their knees trying to make sense of what happened here. And some, too young to fully understand, taking the first steps in saying goodbye. 9-year-old Angela Villanueva was dismissed from Robb Elementary early the day of the shooting. Some of her best friends weren't so lucky.
I knew a kid named Eliana. We were outside playmates from out of school, and sabes triste because she died. She was my best friend.
The mourning stretches across this town and this state. Harry and Jeanette Cruz drove more than 90 miles from San Antonio to pay their respects.
When I have my granddaughter tonight, I'm going to hug her, and I'm going to make sure that I'll protect her as long as I'm alive.
A mother and daughter making the journey, feeling compelled to visit the memorial after losing a son and brother to gun violence.
Bring the kids some flowers, a little animal, I don't know. When I lost my brother, it was like the end of the world for me. That's how it was.
So many coming to Uvalde to show this community they are not alone, kneeling in prayer, taking a moment, and hoping that somehow, when the time is right, they can find the strength to move forward.
In the midst of everything that is going on, God is still in control, and God will be with them through the whole process.
Thank you, Tom, for that. When we come back, home for a hero, the veteran who was deployed 5 times, now getting a place to call his own. That story's up next. Finally tonight, the veteran and Purple Heart recipient who dedicates his time to helping others and the unforgettable surprise he received in return. NBC's Carrie Sanders with that story.
I had my son, and I really wanted him to have something to be proud of. And I wanted him to be able to look at me one day and go, my dad did something that mattered.
Inspired by his little boy, at 27 years old, Alfonso Porter enlisted in the United States Army. 6 months later, he deployed to Afghanistan.
There were many trying times in a war zone, but you had one rather dramatic moment.
While on patrol, we had someone use a church as a defensive point. A hand grenade was thrown from the top of that point. I took shrapnel underneath my vest and was peppered with it up my back. It wasn't until I was back in the truck that I realized that was hit.
You didn't even know that you'd been peppered with shrapnel?
There's so much going on, and you're really worried about your brothers while you're out there, and they're worried about you, so you continue to do what your training is.
Because he was wounded in combat, Staff Sergeant Porter was awarded the Purple Heart in 2010. He dedicated another 10 years of his life to the Army, deployed 5 more times before he was honorably discharged.
It was 9-0?
He was now just Alfonso, a civilian, and a father. He and his partner April are raising 7 children, calling Houston, Texas home. Alfonso's biggest challenge is one familiar to those who leave the military. In the civilian world, how do you quantify success?
I had no idea how to achieve success because my definition of success had become one thing for so long.
Enter the Military Warrior Support Foundation, an organization helping vets transition into civilian life, offering programs that focus on financial wellness, leadership development, and recreational activities that help build bonds. He learned, unlike military life with patches and medals, you can quantify success on your own terms.
It taught me to be a better employee. It taught me to be a better father, a better friend, and a better man in general.
One of the foundation's many programs is called Homes for Wounded Heroes. To date, 900 mortgage-free homes have been donated to veterans, like this one. Alfonso and April had no idea, but over the last few months, workers raced to renovate this home, all for this drum roll moment. The Military Warrior Support Foundation and Lieutenant General Leroy Sisko actually wanted to tell you something here today.
Wells Fargo Bank have donated this home to us. They've donated several to us, to our foundation. And today, they want to show you some love. And this is your beautiful home. Welcome.
Thank you so much, sir.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
You didn't expect that, did you?
No, I wasn't quite expecting that.
Do you think you should take a look inside?
Sure.
Stunned and grateful, Alfonso and April toured their new home for the first time.
New appliances.
Imagine the moms coming to visit.
This is a big closet, right?
I get like this much. I'm not the typical woman. I get like this much space.
That's not
true. He gets all the rest of the space.
I don't know who to believe here, but I'm siding with her. A place that signifies endless possibilities for their family. What are the memories you hope to build here in your new home?
There'll definitely be some memories of cutting grass. But I hope to have the meeting place for our family. I'd love for people to say, hey, let's go down to Texas because that's where family is. That's home base.
Sounds like a dream coming true.
Yes, sir. No one just hands you keys, and somebody just handed me keys today.
Watching Top Story for Tom Llamas, I'm Kate Snow in New York, and we remember all those who serve and those who made the ultimate sacrifice.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.